Welcome to The Great Awakening. I'm your host, Josh Daws. My guest today is the author of an upcoming book that comes out this week called Domestic Extremist, a practical guide to winning the culture war. She is a conservative mom living deep behind enemy lines in Southern California. She writes under the pseudonym of Peachy Keenan to protect her identity, and she's a regular contributor at American Mind and The Federalist, and she's written some great pieces. Most recently, she wrote something that caught my eye about the war on normies and how culture seems to be attacking people that just want to go on with their lives. They want to just go to school and not worry about it, not get involved in the culture war. But the left seems intent on radicalizing normies. So we talk about that. We talk about what it means to be a normie. What are the norms that are under attack? And a lot of the response that we've seen in the last few weeks with the Bud Light boycott and the Target boycott that's going on, and how it seems to have awoken something in the normies that is hopefully going to put some pressure on a lot of this woke agenda and cause companies to rethink that. So it's a great conversation. She's a lot of fun to talk to. I think you're really going to enjoy this. So let's jump right into my conversation with Peachy. Hey, Peachy, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me.
Cool. So I'm reasonably sure a lot of my audience is probably unfamiliar with you. Do you mind telling us kind of a little bit of your story, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Peachy Keenan. I'm a contributing editor at the American Mind, which is a publication of the Claremont Institute. I'm also a senior contributor at the Federalist. I tweet about politics and, various social issues. And I have a book coming out in just a few days on Tuesday called Domestic Extremist, a practical guide to winning the culture war. And
Nice.
when I'm not doing that, I am a work at home, stay at home mom of a relatively large family here in Southern California.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, we were just chatting beforehand. Our family lived out in there. It's not easy to raise a large family there in Los Angeles. It's not conducive to large families, is it?
Oh no! Not only is it like super expensive, and it's hard to afford a house that's big enough. But there's also like the thing of people see you walking around with like more than one or two kids, and they shoot you the dirty looks, and you're sort of a pariah, here deep behind enemy lines. And you sort of have, a little bit of a target on your back. You don't want to, raise suspicions in the neighborhood. You're the only one who doesn't have a rainbow flag on your house.
Yeah. Now, were you always a conservative growing up, out there in Southern California?
No, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because I've done like a total 180, politically, culturally, and also spiritually. I grew up, I was like a coastal elitist. My parents were secular atheists. I didn't know anything about anything, but they were like, both my mom and dad were like Reagan Republicans, but obviously, I totally rejected that. And I was sort of raised by the culture and by my friends in high school. And, I was never political. Politics was cringe, but I definitely was raised to be sort of a snob about anyone who believed in religion or Christianity. Those were the flyover people. Those were the country hicks. Like we were smarter than that. And then, in college, obviously, I was sort of, infused with all the feminist ideas. I became, super pro-choice. Girls should, you should spend your 20s avoiding pregnancy, avoiding marriage. That was the goal. And it really wasn't until I met my husband. And by that point, I had sort of become like more politically conservative after 9/11, really. And I was like, oh, okay, wait a second. Like, why are they burning the American flag? That's crazy. We were under attack. And when I met my husband a few years later, he had his own sort of awakening from liberalism to conservatism to social conservatism. And so really just in the process of like wooing me and courting me, I sort of came around to his point of view. And then we got married. I had a baby. And I realized like, okay, wow, I have finally found my calling. Like this is awesome. I love I love this guy. I want to have more babies. And I, in the nick of time, escaped feminism, by the skin of my teeth in order to have what is basically a relatively large family, especially for living in LA.
Nice. And yeah, the reason I wanted to have you on, recently you wrote something for the American Mind. It was basically a defense of normies, and I thought that was a fascinating take because on the right there seems to be I don't know, growing contempt for normies that they don't know what time it is, and we just need to leave them behind and focus on the culture war, and they're just going to be kind of fodder for that. But your piece was very, I don't know, kind of defending that kind of normie outlook on life. Can you talk a bit about that? First of all, what is a normie?
Yeah, so the normies are, I come from a long line of normies. These are people who are just, they embrace the American dream. They want to live the American middle class dream, have a nice big TV and a couch and be comfortable and not have to worry too much about culture wars and politics. And it's just all feels like it's just a waste of time. These are people who don't want to go out in the streets and protest because they have jobs, they're working hard, they're raising their families. They just want to be normal. Okay. That's what we all want. And so the war on normies seems to be like, you're not going to be allowed to enjoy just regular life anymore. You're not allowed to walk into Target with your 3-year-old and not have them like stare at some mannequin wearing a tuck friendly, a male mannequin in a tuck friendly women's bathing suit. You're not able to go to Disneyland and go to the little princess boutique and not have to see a man in a dress and a mustache with full makeup and like, what's that, mommy? This is like a war on normies, and I will not stand for it. It's like, enough of this. And, yes, some of the normies, normal people or whatever, I love normies. They don't know what time it is. They need to get with the program. They need to kind of wake up. And I mean, that's true. I mean, this is really a numbers game, and there's massive strength in our numbers. And so like radicalizing the normies, like just enough, just a little bit is really, that's the secret weapon that we can use to win the culture war. And amazingly, I've been writing for the American Mind and tweeting all this, but no one has been more effective at radicalizing the normies than the left. And we're seeing this like just in the last month. My mind has been blown by my normie friends, my Catholic, mom and dads who were just not really that political, suddenly up in arms about the Dodgers, about Target. They're sharing memes. They're disavowing all this stuff. They all disavowed Disney already. And so that gives me like incredible hope. And I just wrote a thing in the Federalist earlier this week about how parents can how they can protect their kids from the LG Pride Month at their elementary school, because my friends are dealing with this at public schools. And there's a school called Satakoy Elementary that organized a boycott of today's Pride assembly at this public elementary deep in Van Nuys in LA. And today the news were there and there was helicopters and there was this huge protest of mostly Armenian families who were just like, enough. No, they're just saying no to it. And so that fills me with hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the Target boycott alone, it's been crazy. I mean, just, my wife and I will we talk in the mornings before the kids are up. And, one of our ongoing conversations the past 3-4 years has just been that frustration with, friends or, acquaintances, people at church that just don't seem to have the same kind of, concern about what's happening in culture. And just this Target thing has pushed some buttons. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. I think it's as these, like you said, is the left is radicalizing them. It's not anything that we're having to do to kind of open their eyes. I think it's when their lives start to intersect with this wokeness kind of, they can't, the blinders are up, and they can't avoid it because it's being shoved like right in their face.
Yeah, and I mean, especially maybe with Bud Light also.
Mm.
That was just so shocking of like a brand, disaster. Like, who
Mhm.
are you appealing to with this special can for, for Dylan Mulroney? Um, yeah, I think that parents, and also, I think the ground here was definitely softened by COVID. And, parents kind of, that was the beginning of like the parent rebellion, like, wait, the masks and the mandates and Zoom school. And it all just seemed so unfair and put such a burden on parents. And then that went right into, the summer of Floyd and, these sort of anti-racist struggle sessions and CRT and all the things that, Christopher Rufo and like libs of TikTok were revealing about who these teachers were, these sort of
Mhm.
like freakish, like crazy left wing, they all had their own pronouns and they definitely wanted to indoctrinate their little kids at school. Like they're saying this out loud on TikTok. And I think parents were like, okay, no, whoa, like, wait, what? Like, oh, my kids are not safe at school.
Mhm.
They're not safe watching TV. Like, what do we do here? And here I mean, it's not, where people are now having fun seeing the Target stock price go down and the Bud Light stock price go down. People are now enjoying this and they
Yeah.
want to hurt these corporations. And like the fact that this tactic has become fun, it's very low effort. You don't have to make a sign. You don't have to fly to Washington. You know what I mean? It's very low effort to just like avoid certain products, avoid certain stores. I mean, it's hard to avoid like Netflix. Like, sometimes you do want some entertainment, like obviously. But people are now looking around for like, okay, what else? What can we boycott next? And so
Mhm.
I hope people will literally start boycotting public schools, like because that's the soft underbelly right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting here in the South. I think there's been this kind of you know pervasive idea that yeah, this stuff is awful, but it's happening out there in California. This is something that happens in New York City. Our schools are our little community here is safe. And I think the Target thing is like, oh, this is in our backyard. This is I take my kids to Target. I drink Bud Light. This is intersecting where the regular people in kind of the flyover red states are living as well.
Yeah, it's no longer limited to geography. This is no
Hmm.
longer just on the coasts. And I wrote an article about this exact topic for the American Mind, I think last month, called "The Revolution of Color," because I have my sister's family left LA and moved to Tennessee about a year ago to outside Nashville to escape everything, to escape it all. And after the school shooting at Covenant Christian School in Nashville, I was like amazed to watch that within a week turn into this civil rights, black, white, race issue, because they protested gun control in the state house in Nashville, and then they got expelled, and he happened to be black, so then that made it a race issue, and I was like, wait, what? This is about a transgender school shooter targeting Christians, like that. That was what the story was, and it got flipped around into this woke victory against the racist, white Nashville people. And I
Hmm.
was just marveling at that tactic. And I was like, okay, you can't escape it in anywhere in the South. I mean, it is, I like that there's a term hicklibs, like these are people in rural states, in rural small towns, in all 50 states, and they've got the blue hair and the purple hair and the rainbow pins. They're just like if I walked down to Hollywood, or
Hmm.
to Santa Monica. Like there's no daylight. There's no more geographic separation. There's no safety from it. So look, okay, we can't escape it. You can't go anywhere. You can't go to another country. Everything is pride. Everything is everywhere. So, the reason I wrote this book is like, well, how do we take a stand? Like what can we do? Like, and so honestly, you have to just protect yourself and your kids and your family and just resolve to just not buy into it and to just reject all of it. And that's what basically being a domestic extremist is, just being extremely domestic.
Nice. Yeah. And it's another thing I liked on your piece about the war on normies is that it occurred to me reading that so much of the leftist program is about tearing down those norms. They want that's it's all queer theory is. It's a revolution, revolt against norms. And I really want people on the right to kind of make sure that we don't those of us that are kind of more in the culture war, that we don't forget what we're fighting for. That it is good to have, live a normal life where you're looking forward to the lake on the weekend and, a nice Bud Light on the lake. But in order to preserve that, we've got to fight for that. We've got to fight for those norms, not, dismiss the normies that, aren't with it yet.
Right. And I mean, people who don't go along with the program, who don't want to put a pride flag up or don't want to put their pronouns in their bios, they just want to simply like not engage, now they're called extremists. Parents who protested Target were literally called domestic terrorists. Okay. Meanwhile, a couple of years ago, the left burned down the Targets, like literally burned them to the ground, stole everything inside, and like beat up anyone who tried to stop them. But a parent who says, hey, take that display down, they're the domestic terrorists, right? So, but, it's very ironic. They're the extremists, but they've somehow made us the extremists. We're homophobic, we're transphobic, racist, bigot, all of those words, which are basically totally meaningless. And I think that is what the normies have finally realized. Like people live in fear, of being called these horrible names, being vilified. I'm a racist. I hate gays. I don't hate gay people. I don't, but they're made to feel this way. And I think finally people have figured out that all that name calling is just a tactic. It's just bullying. It means nothing. It's not about being homophobic. You don't want your child learning about, graphic, pornographic types of sex in 6th grade Common Core curriculum, which is what they learn about. In California Common Core, my friends who go to a very, very exclusive private school here in 6th grade sex ed, they had a whole class on Black queer love. And like, these are 11-year-olds. Like, what? Like, I don't even know what that means either. So like, I can't even talk about this stuff in polite company, but you're teaching it to 6-year-olds. And to say no to that doesn't make you bad, doesn't make you a bigot. To say no to that makes you a good person, makes you a wonderful parent, makes you, normal. And people need to have the courage to be normal, basically. And we're not allowed to. But I'm saying with this book, it's like, I'm trying to build morale. Like, no, we can be brave and we can just laugh at them when they try to call us these stupid names.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you timed this perfectly.
I know. Thank you, Left. Thank you, Pride Month.
Because there seems to be an appetite for this amongst the normies now. Like, okay, we're in this fight, whether we want to or not. What can we do? Can you walk us through like some of the things you recommend in your book?
Well, so my book, I basically wanted to write about how we got here. Like, why is it considered like bad to have, more than 1 or 2 kids? Why is it considered like weird to get married, let's say in your 20s and want to stay married, despite through thick and thin? Like, why is it bad to tell a young girl, like a 15-year-old, you probably shouldn't be having sex with multiple partners right now. Like, you should wait. Like, girls should not be on Twitter having giant body counts, lists of anonymous partners. Like, it should be okay to say those things are objectively not good for you, right? That's just common sense. Like, throughout history, people knew this, but that's all been thrown away thanks to feminism. So this book was my attempt to find out, like, okay, how did this happen? Like, look at all these things they've taken from us. They've made all these kind of crazy things normal, commonplace. Abortion is healthcare now, like that. All these just sort of dystopian terms. And then I also wanted to give people some ways out. Like, how do we get out of this? How do we lead the way out? How do we win this culture war? And these ideas are very simple. Like, they're very fundamental. This is not rocket science. I didn't come up with anything like brand new that no one's ever heard of. But these things are also totally taboo. Like, it's taboo to say, like, maybe you should wait to have sex till you're married. maybe you should get married young and want to stay married and not be involved in, polyamorous, like open marriage, whatever. That's probably not the best practices for you to raise children. You know, just it's like these things that are you're forbidden to talk about. Like, how dare you suggest to a young woman that she should go out there and explore her sexuality in every possible way for as long as she wants, and there should be zero consequences. Like, that's just not reality. If you've lived with,
Yeah.
if you know women, that's just not reality. And people are ending up alone. They're ending up divorced or unmarried and child free. And that might be fun when you're young. And, I lived that life when I was young. But as you get older, that's going to be much harder. That's going to be really sad and very depressing. And you're seeing that with the rates of antidepressant use, in older women. That's when they get very depressed. And I mean, I'm sorry, like, could there be a connection? Like, what are we telling people? Like, choose your career, give your best years to your boss. And then you get inevitably get fired. And now you're older and there you are. That's it. What were you thinking? And my hope is that people will maybe avoid some of the mistakes I made waiting too long and avoid what I see young men and women, the mistakes that they're making.
Yeah. I just, the thing that strikes me so much is so many of these like TikTok videos of women kind of coming to that realization in their late 30s. Like, I've given my life to this career and now it's not likely that I'm going to be able to have kids or the marriage that I wanted, the life that, I've come to realize I actually want. And that's really kind of birthing whole new industries, that and the gay marriage of surrogacy and just the whole, other Pandora's box of evil coming out of that.
Yeah. I mean, reproductive technology, I mean, it's like a joke, like, if you look around, you see these like fertility doctors, and they're driving Lamborghinis. Okay. Like having women, convincing them that they can wait as long as they want to start a family is making these doctors incredibly wealthy. And there is just this huge industry now around reproductive technology, egg freezing, egg donation, surrogacy, IVF, all of the things, embryo freezing, all of the things. And they're coming out with artificial wombs, apparently, at some point one day. That should be interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. And, in the course of researching this book, I found out that like most big Fortune 500 companies offer now as part of their like benefits package, egg freezing as a part of a health benefit to women. Because God forbid you get pregnant and you have to go off on maternity leave and maybe you figure out you don't want to go back. And now they've got to replace you and figure out what to do with you. So no, just freeze your eggs as long as you want. Keep working. But what they don't tell you is that even though your eggs might stay the same age, like you won't, your uterus will keep on aging. Your body will keep on aging. So it's preposterous because at the end of the day, you're still going to need a surrogate. Will you, who are you going to fertilize? You're still going to have to buy sperm from, like, it doesn't solve anything. It seems to be creating many more problems.
Yeah. But
and they can all be avoided.
Yeah, it keeps women productive though. That's
keep
the
you productive.
Thing.
Just keep working. That's right.
Yeah. How much of this, there's a kind of debate on the right now about liberalism, classical liberalism, whether that has led to all of this or whether that's good. Where are you at on that debate? Do you think that this, can be traced back to liberalism?
I mean, I suppose so to some degree, but I honestly, I think the biggest culprit here has been that conservatives were sort of rocked to sleep by, Republican or conservative people who basically, standing athwart history, yelling, stop, William F. Buckley's famous quote. And, nothing stopped. Maybe they had some wins, like slowing some of it down. But stuff that they considered way too far left, they eventually they agree on a little bit of it. It's been this sort of like very slow, slippery slope. And then with gay marriage, they promise like, no, this is just, just going to be a gay marriage, not a slippery slope. But now we see throuple marriages, like three
Mm.
people marriages. Now I just read something about like they're creating like embryos or zygotes or something, human embryos with two male cells or whatever, no mother required. And yeah, the slippery slope is real. So I mean, classical liberalism, I mean, I think it's just hard. It's hard to really fathom the relentlessness and the sort of like almost demonic possession that the left has to tear everything down. They
Mhm.
are so relentless. They are so vicious. They will stop at nothing. And like, if you're a classical liberal, you're just not like that constitutionally.
Mhm.
You're moral, maybe you're Christian. You're just not going to be able to even engage on that level, on that kind of like down and dirty level, with that level of vitriol, that level of like just absolute destruction that they don't
Mhm.
care about. I mean, you know, late term abortion, like who would even, how could you even like think about that? Like decide that that would be a thing that you would force, like push people to do, like, just
Mhm.
these bizarre things. There's no limit. There's no limits with them. There's
Yeah.
no, oh no, we'll never go that far. No, they will. They will take it all the way. So now we're in a situation where like whoever wants it more is going to win, and that's
Yeah.
it. And so if they want it more, they're going to win. And if we want to stop it, it's going to take basically all of us just deciding that it stops with us at our
Mhm.
door with our kids. Like that there's no way they're going to get us. And it's wild. I mean, I never thought that this would be like the future that I would be raising children in. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and let me tell you, I don't know if you did, but it was great. Like
Yeah.
it was like peak America, it was just everyone got along. We had racial harmony, like it was no big deal, like whatever. And I thought I'd raise kids and have families and things would just continue to be awesome. And like now I'm terrified. I have a couple teenagers now, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what? How are they going to get into college? They won't
Yeah.
get it. They're the wrong color. How are they going to get married? Like, are there any girls who are, wanted to get married young? And maybe like among the trads, among the Catholics, you have to kind of, that's it.
Mhm.
I can't send them to college. What if their roommate is the wrong other gender and they have to share a room? Like I can't, like UCLA. I was actually researching for one of my kids to do like a high school summer program there, and you stay the dorms. And I was looking at the application, like filling it out, and I saw like a big disclaimer, like warning, we are, gender blind, and your child may be rooming with a child not who doesn't have their assigned gender at birth or whatever. And I was like, my son's going to be rooming with a girl with like a short haircut. How's
Mhm.
that? That's no, like what? That's not
Yeah.
not good for either one of them. And so they've lost their minds, okay? And we just have to recognize that. Like, it's not left and right anymore. It's not, that's their opinion. This is my opinion. It's like, no, they want to destroy us and everything we believe in. And we better figure that out before they do.
Yeah. Yeah. The side that wants to win is always going to beat the side that wants to be left alone.
Totally, totally.
And yeah, I think we've got to wake up to that. I tell parents that if the left wants your kids more than you do, in a lot of
Right.
cases, it's like they want to disciple them.
That's right.
That's the whole point of all of the. Yeah, I mean, I was looking through all the different companies and see what they were doing for Pride Month, and you got McGraw Hill, the largest textbook,
Mm,
pushing it. You've got Scholastic, you've got all of these like household names that we grew up with in the 80s are
mhm,
fully on board with this. It's like
mhm.
they are bound and determined to reach our kids, but we've got to want it more, and we've got to take the steps and precautions to protect them from that, because it's not it's not enough just to take them to Sunday school on Sunday and hope that it all works out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and part of it is, you've got to get to the parents. Like there's a lot of parents who think it's mean, it's not nice to, tell your child, well, no, there's only two genders. Like there's only like, creatures come in male and female, like go to the zoo,
Mhm.
count the genders. You're going to find two, and we're no different. And so, but some people think it's mean. they've been terrified into believing, that two plus two equals five. And it's going to take some like deprogramming. I mean, it's like they're in a cult, and like we've got to try to deprogram those people and say like, well, no, I mean, this is just the truth, and there's no hate involved. Like, there's no hate involved here. This is just like truth, and these are the best practices on how to, try to get a happy life for yourself, to try to raise a stable family. Children raised in environments where their parents are helping like indoctrinate them, who think it's okay. That leads to like, well, this moral relativism where like, well, drugs, that's up to you. You're the boss. Like, you tell me if you want to try some drugs. You tell me if you want to put on a dress. Oh, do you want to get your breasts cut off? Oh, how are those children going to be in 20 years? I just think the outcomes are going to be provably worse than children raised by, parents that asserted their authority a little more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, I read something this week about the connection. It might have been the lady that wrote Feminism Against Progress.
Mary Harrington. Yeah.
Mary Harrington. I think it was her that was writing about this, about how a lot of kind of speculating that a lot of this, what we're seeing with young women, and their anxiety and the identity issues can be traced back to them being kind of ripped from their moms and put in daycare at, 2 weeks after birth, and just kind of not having that, that kind of bonding with their moms to really kind of, instill an identity of like, I'm this woman's, this is my family. This is, those bonds that are so important, especially in early childhood.
Yeah. I mean, Mary talks about, daycare a lot, and about the kind of the bad side effects that it has. And people get really upset when you say you shouldn't use daycare. Daycare is bad for kids. They get really upset because they're like, well, how am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to feed the kids? Like, how dare you tell me that I'm not allowed to use daycare? And I always say, well, saying something is worse, just objectively worse for your child. Like, I'm not going to outlaw it, but it's important to recognize that there is a cost here. Just because you have to use it doesn't mean it's good. Mm-hmm. Just because you have to have chemotherapy for your cancer doesn't mean it's like objectively good for you to get chemotherapy in general. Like, and so daycare is like a Band-Aid on a structural economic issue of like having to have double incomes. Mm-hmm. It's not a panacea. It's not wonderful. 6-week-olds biologically thrive most when they're with their mothers. Like, we know this. Like, it's been proven. Their cortisol levels are down. Their stress levels are down. They thrive. They have higher cognitive development. They're more able to breastfeed, which is, we know, is better for the baby. So many reasons. But the fact that you have to explain this even to anyone is like, what, we've lost the plot. Mm-hmm. That the fact that it's controversial, which it is, I talk a lot about this in my book, that it's controversial for you to tell a woman that you're better off at home with your baby than here at work. Like, they will lose their mind. They will lose them. How dare you? Mm-hmm. How dare you oppress me? How dare you, you don't want me to achieve in life. You don't want me to become like successful in my business. It's like, well, you don't have to be a mother. Okay. Not everyone in the world needs to have children. Okay. I would never like force someone to be a mother. Like, no. But if you choose that, it does require a level of sacrificial love to do it the right way. And if you half-ass it, if you outsource your parenting, like, you're going to reap some things that maybe you didn't know you were going to. And there's going to be effects. And 6-week-olds should not be warehoused. I mean, that's just common sense to me. Like, if you have to leave the baby with grandma or a babysitter now and then, like, fine. That's no problem with that. But 50, 60 hours away from anyone who loves it, that's just common sense. You don't need me to even say this, but it's so controversial to even whisper this. And also, the thing with daycare is that what you're also doing is training the mother to kind of sever her own connection to her child. You're like snipping the maternal bond, over time. Like, it gets flabby, it gets loose. And so as the child grows up, the mother's like, well, I had strangers raise the kid. Like, let me see what these strangers tell me to do with that kid now. You stop listening to your own instincts, which are screaming at you and saying, do not leave this baby with these strangers. Like, they may be fine, but your whole body will scream in protest when you hand it over. And my friends have told me this. Like, when they drop their baby off, they cry for an hour. Mm-hmm. This is your body saying to you, like, you've just done something that's just not, it's just a little unnatural. Mm-hmm. But later on, if you've done this, got into the habit of, keeping your kids at arm's length, that's gonna kind of inform your relationship moving forward. There's no way it won't.
And that kind of is the dark side of norms, is that a lot of these cultural practices become norms over time. In the 50s, as we were kind of breaking down those barriers and shoving women into the workplace, it was it was a novel idea, and but over time it's become the norm, so that if you question it at all, then whoa, what are you doing? And so I think that's another reason why right now it feels like kind of like the the Star Trek Picard line, where he's like, the line must be drawn here, thus far and no further.
Right.
It's like, if we don't stop these practices, this transgender ideology, all of this stuff is going to become a norm if we just lay down, and then it's even harder to root out. So I think, that's something that, really animates me right now. Like, let's not let anything else become a norm.
Right. And it also makes the whole idea of having kids just seem like, well, forget it. There's just too much controversy. There's too much, seems too difficult. How do you, maybe, I don't, what if my kid became transgender? I didn't want to deal with that. That I have to work. I don't want to take the time off. And so just the idea of having kids has become this, like, only rich people can do it, or people who are willing to make some enormous, unbelievable sacrifice of their free time and any spare money they have. And so, like, I get it why millennials and, like, what Gen Z or whatever is like, no way. Like, how will I do that? Like, I can barely, get out of bed in the morning. I got to find my edibles, I have to save my money for my, like, weed or my weed delivery guy. And the thing is, it used to be much, much simpler. Like, as you said, like, it was just sort of natural and normal to get married and have your children and know that you can stay with them and when they're little. And women, of course, can work. Like, look, I'm a working mother. I mostly work at home as a writer. But when my then youngest was like 4, he started school. And my husband had, at the time, like, he was working at home. He had a home office. And I got out of the blue this, like, amazing job opportunity. In-house. This is pre-pandemic, in-house at a big company. And, like, it was like a dream job for me, as a copywriter. And so I was like, it was incredible money, and we have all these kids in LA. And I was like, I think I need to do this. Like, the kid will be fine. He goes to school. And, it was a good experience, but it was really hard to be away. Even though I didn't have any babies, I had nobody, they were big kids in elementary school. It was incredibly hard to come home at 7:00 at night, exhausted, and, like, then be mom. And I did it only for a couple of years. I started figuring out, like, okay, this is not working for me anymore. I got the experience, I got all these perks, but it's not worth it. And I was, like, wondering, like, okay, how should I do this? Like, do I quit? What do I do? And then literally, like, that week I found out I was pregnant again, sort of by surprise. And I was like, oh, well, there we go. Now I have a great reason to quit. And I never went back to the office after that. So I want to thank my last baby for she broke me out. But that's the thing. And the other thing is, like, with birth control, women it's so hard to decide, like, when to go off birth control and when to have your baby. And you have to make this big, big, giant decision. It didn't used to have to be that stressful. You could just kind of, like, not think about it too much, and a baby would come. And you never had to sweat it out and, like, should I go off the pill? Should I stay on the pill? What should I do? It was just a sort of natural thing that would happen at regular intervals. There are natural ways to both avoid pregnancy and also try to increase the odds of pregnancy. Natural family planning, if you're Catholic, That's like something that many Catholic families do to space children out. And that's so much easier than like being on the pill and then having to decide how to go off it. How do you go off it? It's much easier to stay on once you're on it. And that's why women have been get on the pill and they're on there for 20 years, 30
Hmm.
years. And it just feels like a train that will, it's not going to stop. You can't get off.
Yeah. So how do we, as parents, who have kids growing up in a society with these norms that we're talking about that are harmful, not good for them, how do we instill a good set of norms? How do we recover the norms that we've lost?
I mean, I took a little bit of a shortcut on this because, we converted, my husband and I converted to Catholicism when the kids were little. And so all the children have been raised as cradle Catholics. I was not, and he was not. I was the secular atheist. I've come a long way in my journey, but that is like a shortcut. That will really, if you're doing it the right way and find the right parish, that's just like an incredible world of, it's still, all the norms are still there. They've all been preserved. We kind of have found a community of like-minded parents who also, teach their children the truth about there's two genders and, all this stuff that you see on TV is not, that's not healthy for you. And pornography is super destructive. It's a drug and you have to avoid that the way you would any other drug. You're just sort of teaching them morals just by being Catholic, but also you talk about it as a family. And I like to say that, when I lived on the other side of this, when I lived among the libs, hell really was other people's children. Because you could do anything you wanted, tell your kids the right thing, and you're looking at the right movies that didn't have porn in it or whatever. But the minute you were at like Little League or at the park or at like a play date, the other kids aren't getting those rules. The other kids had smartphones at age 8, age 7. The other kids are seeing movies that you probably wouldn't want your kid to see, and they're being taught things that you're not teaching your kid. And there are boys in tutus and, boys dressed as girls with new names at camp or whatever. And so, for me, the magic formula here is making sure you know who your children are hanging out with. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it does require like maybe you need all new friends. Maybe you need to, you need to move. You need to get out, pull yourself out of the people who are just they're going to make your life so much harder to parent, and they'll question you. Oh, why aren't you letting him wear nail polish? Like what's wrong? Why can't he experiment with clothes? Like my son, what's wrong? Mm-hmm. You're so closed-minded. What age? And I was asked once at a preschool, it was like a preschool mom's night out or something stupid like that. I used to get invited to all those things. And we were like drinking wine and whatever. And one mother was like, well, how old do you think your daughter will be when you get her on the pill? Now, my daughter was like 2 years old at the time. Okay. And her daughter was like 8 months old. And I'm like, the pill? Well, she's 2. Like, the answer is like, what? And she's like, well, I just want to get her on as soon as she gets her period. And I'm going to make sure she trusts me as her friend and tells me everything, and had this whole fantasy already built around her infant daughter's like sex life. And I'm like, I have nothing in common. They're nice, these people, but I have nothing in common with them. And if they knew how I felt, they would like behead me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So my biggest piece of advice to people is find a community, find at least one other family that has, kids you can trust, who aren't going to like, show your kid porn at the sleepover. And trust me, this is hard, but it's a process. But mm-hmm. we feel like we finally got there after a lot of mistakes, and tried this school. But honestly, like, just do it. And if you homeschool, that's a shortcut too, because a lot of homeschool parents are doing that because, mm-hmm. They want to keep their kids away from the rainbow horde also.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, you cannot discount Christianity's resources in just being tied to a transcendent truth where it isn't tossed to and fro from, by the winds of culture. If it's done right, there's a lot of churches that just go right along with that. But if you find yourself a strong Bible believing church in that community, I think that's key to really kind of finding an anchor to attach yourself to as things come and go in culture.
One of the soft underbellies that the left has exploited so perfectly is the church, evangelical churches and Catholic churches, and you'll see churches that have the trans flag hanging. They have gay pastors or whatever in full trans garb giving the sermon. There was some church in New York, I forget which church, had like a drag queen show, like at the altar,
Yeah.
They have been wokeified like long ago, and I mean, as a Catholic, like Pope Francis is, I don't want to say anything bad about the Pope, but, I don't think he's the best advocate for traditional values. I mean, he's made it clear that he like hates conservative Catholics in America. Okay, sorry. So yeah, you have to be careful, even, and I'm not talking about like, the child molestation stuff, like that's totally separate. And I'm talking about today, you might find a priest who will start ranting about, racist white parishioners, or about, welcoming, where we're so inclusive of everyone. And that's like, oh no, he's gonna do like a whole pride thing. And so you have to be so careful. There are good parishes. You have to really vet them and just ask around. If you're new to a place, people have asked me, I've just moved to like Orange County, like we need to how do we find friends? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, just if you find a good like Christian school or Catholic school that's like conservative, like that will be your entry point into like a safe space, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a Southern Baptist, so we've got our issues as well. But yeah, there are some good churches out there, and that is, I think, key to really having a hope of raising the next generation to reject a lot of this.
Well, do you feel safer living in Georgia like than you did when you lived in California? Do you feel like your kids are like better, at least somewhat better insulated?
Yeah, I do, to a degree. Like you said, the other people's kids. That's the biggest thing. The not, despite the Bible Belt thing, most people don't go to church,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
they're getting discipled by Netflix and whatever they're letting them watch, and they've all got cell phones at 8. So it's not. I don't feel like there's any place that is safe. And I think that's a little bit more dangerous here because I think parents can tend to let their guard down.
Interesting.
So when we were in LA, there's billboards and stuff. So you're constantly on guard. Look down.
Yeah.
Don't look over there. Oh, we're going to take a different street.
Yeah.
Just because it's everywhere. We went to church on Hollywood Boulevard. So we would regularly see, homeless people shooting up, as we're walking into church. So,
man.
it's... that was a interesting life.
Yeah, I was once driving. I think I had to take a kid to like Children's Hospital in LA, deep in the heart of LA. Went a little kid for some reason, and we're like driving through Hollywood, and there was like a giant billboard or something about like nude live girls or whatever. And he was like, he read it. He was like, he could read. He read it to me. I'm like, what's that mean, mommy? Like, no. never mind. Just look over there.
Yes, we don't have to deal with that in Georgia, which is nice.
Yeah, right.
Yet.
Right.
Well, Peachy, I've enjoyed talking with you. I like to end each episode. There's so many black pills in the world. So I like to ask my guests, what's one thing that's giving you hope right now?
Well, I think the one thing giving me hope is just the fact that so many of my Dodger fan friends, who I did not think that they would disavow the team, they have all said, shockingly, they're like season ticket holders. They're all saying, I'm never going to another game. I'm done.
Wow.
And these are
awesome.
These are like cradle Dodger fans. They're like, I'm done. People have had it. And I mean, it's sad. It's tragic, but that does give me hope that the normies have woken up, and we're going to need them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's something this past year has just ratcheted it up. Like, I don't understand. It's gone from, accept us, love is love, to this virulent anti-Christian flavor to it that is just blatant. Right. And I think
love us or we'll kill you, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that's encouraging though to hear that.
It is. I mean,
I'd love to see more of the players step up and speak out.
Yeah, a few have stepped up, but not a single one has said they won't play on Pride Night. You know, there's still like a line they are scared to cross. I mean, I understand, but the first time, if one of them does, I think there might be a tidal wave. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I mean, even a family friend who named their son after Clayton Kershaw, you know, even they are like burning their Dodger hats.
Wow.
I know it's sad. Like, I'm not happy about any of this, but at least we're not just going along like we always do. You know, want to make trouble. It's like, no, we need to make a little trouble here.
Yeah. Yeah. And there seems to be, it's more acceptable. I think we've pushed the Overton in the last
I think you're right.
year or so. And so
people are
I'm
not
excited.
as afraid. Yeah, they're not as afraid of being called racist. They they overuse that word. It's totally meaningless.
Yep.
People know they're not racist. They're sick of having to defend themselves.
Yep.
And so it's empowering now.
Yep. Well, I'm right there with you in hope. Where can people find your book?
So the book comes out on D-Day next Tuesday, June 6th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere books are sold. And you can also find me on Twitter at Keenan Peachy. And you can subscribe to my Substack, peachykeenan.substack.com.
Awesome. I will have links for all that in the show notes. Peachy, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Josh. It was a pleasure.
That's our show for today. Big thanks to Peachy Keenan for joining me for this conversation. As always, you can find links in the show notes to where you can purchase her book, her Substack, follow her on Twitter. She's definitely someone you want to be following. She's got a really great sense of humor. Her writing is very witty, so I think her new book is going to be really enjoyable to read. If you found this conversation helpful, go ahead and share it with a friend, especially if you've got normies in your life that are kind of waking up to what's going on, and they're concerned with what they're seeing at Target or Kohl's or any of the other places that seem to be shoving a lot of the woke stuff in our faces. This would be a good episode to share with them. Welcome them to the fight as they're kind of waking up to a lot of the cultural issues. So that's really who I'm making this show for. Is like, I want to be a resource for people who are kind of waking up to what time it is, and like, how can we fight back? How should we think about these things as Christians? So I hope you're finding the show helpful, and that it's something that you could recommend. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. If you are listening, ratings and reviews over at Apple Podcasts are incredibly helpful. Until next time, I will see you soon.